Sword of Convallaria is a pixel art JRPG gacha game that I'm sure you made some ads or sponsored segments from other creators. However, this review is not sponsored, so it means I can say whatever I want. So this is one of the recent gacha games that caught my attention, and I've been playing it for around 10 hours, and I have some things to say about it. In this first impressions review, I'm going to be going over my brutally honest opinions on Sword of Convallaria, including the history of the developers, the monetization, level of grind, and what you can expect out of it in your daily play. My name is Psyche, let's get started. So we'll first take a look into who made Sword of Convallaria, to see if there's any skeletons hiding in the closet. The developer is XD International, which is the global branch of the company with the same name operating out of China. They appear to be a developer and publisher of various indie and mobile games. Looking at their track record, none of their past works really jumps out at me or really strikes me of standing out. Some said some of their past games have been shut down unceremoniously or filled with pay-to-win elements that I can't attest to personally. Generally, gacha games exist on a gray zone when you look at the larger gaming space. Some people will leave a negative review solely by the fact that something has gacha elements. This one caught my eye though. From a first glance, the graphics and presentation does appear to be a cloth above the rest, and well, it's not really fair to have a bias for something just from the developer's past track record. I wouldn't say XD is the most squeaky clean in terms of the quality of their past works, but hey, maybe they learned something over the years. The game is classified as a turn-based RPG. Now, I don't really play these types of games, but there's a whole slew of subcategories for JRPG games, like TRPG, Simulation RPG, though this one gets referred to as a SRPG, which obviously stands for Sword RPG. A minor plus is that the game is only around 5 GB large, since most gachas these days can be at least 10 GB even on mobile. If it's not made clear already, the art style uses pixel art, which is immediately pretty subjective whether this will get you on board or not. Much like how I would describe the tower defense genre with rhythm games, a decision for a presentation like this will already turn some players away. Art is subjective after all. Some people may refuse to play a game just because they don't like the graphics, and I think that is completely fair. However, I do greatly appreciate their decision to go the pixel art route, because it shows a clear creative intent, and that they're willing to market the game to a specific fanbase even if it's not as mainstream. I literally cannot vision any mainstream game using pixel art as its style. The story follows, well, your avatar, who wakes up in a prison cell and has the classic amnesiac trait where you don't remember anything about yourself. In the distance, some guards arrive bringing a new prisoner into your cell, but also begin to kill off the ones in the adjacent cell. Just when you're about to get your turn, a mysterious woman named Rawia storms in and helps you defeat the guards. Her companions Maitha and Feiko join you, but while you try to escape, you're ambushed by archers and Rawia just kinda dies? Well, I guess there's no time to mourn, because after fleeing the dungeons, the kingdom outside seems to be in the midst of a rebellion, with the rioters blocking the exits to the gates. As you face the resistance from the rioters, the guards also march upon you from the other side, then the screen just kinda fades to blank, implying that you just died as well? Anyways, some ominous lines pop up asking you if you wish to change your destiny. Of course you're gonna select yes. Then, you wake up in a dreamlike realm awoken by a talking cat. You can actually name this cat to anything you want, so I chose a fairly befitting name that you should also do. You are told that you have the power to navigate to these floating islands and rewrite your past. Introducing you to the gacha system, you get a free 10 pull and you're scripted to pull a copy of Maitha, who now also appears in the same realm before you. By navigating through this unknown realm, you realize that you can actually go back in time and metaphorically change the outcome of the story. For example, you now know that the riot broke out in the city while you are still in the jail cell, and now you will warn the group to stay put for a couple hours before the riot dies down. With this new route, the gang is able to escape from the city unharmed. That's when you finally learn that Rawia's team is called Sword of Convallaria, a mercenary group that roams the kingdoms. There is also a separate mode called the Spiral of Destiny, where you'll spend this key currency to play. This mode is completely standalone from the main campaign, meaning all the necessary characters are given out to you, and it plays like a day-to-day simulator where you try to complete a task within a certain time cycle to advance the story. Someone could absolutely make the argument that this makes the game completely free to play from a story perspective, as you don't need to touch the gacha at all or make any upgrades to enjoy the story here. Not to mention, this game also does branching storylines with multiple endings. The story, to my understanding, does get pretty good later on, but the early chapters are just fairly generic. The gameplay loop of Convallaria is turn-based strategy, where a unit is separated by class and element. You can move to a square within range, then perform an attack. There are many nuances and attention to detail that I found, like how you can't fire a straight magic bolt attack if an obstacle is in the way, or how you can instantly knock out an enemy if they fall out of bounds. There's gonna be many more systems that I haven't even seen, but one thing I did notice is that the general pace of the game is slower than some of the other gachas I've played. The dialogue boxes takes a while to progress, not to mention that the pixel avatars have to do their animations in between. You can hold down the screen to make it go 2x speed, but this is going to be an exposition-heavy game. You're going to be spending a long time in these cutscenes, and you're going to be taking your time thinking about your plays. Now, this method of grid-based strategy gameplay is not that new, considering I have reviewed Brown Dust 2 on the channel. There's obviously going to be some distinctions, but a major difference is that Brown Dust 2 actively discourages fights to be drawn out. But that restriction doesn't seem to be present here. Obviously, I don't have a problem with stall tactics, as most quests reward you for clearing it fast anyways. But this also means that each level is going to feel like it's progressing slower than Brown Dust 2, whereas the outcome is usually decided by a single turn. There are many ways to interact with the environment, like how you can light grass tiles on fire or roll a boulder down a hill. There's also the Tactics menu, where you can activate your protagonist's skills for a slight edge in a fight. The class system is split into a usual rock, paper, scissors formula with 3 classes: the Breaker, Seeker, and Defender. A Watcher class usually consisting of support who has advantage towards the Destroyer class, who actually has no advantage to anyone, but they make up for it with their powerful kits. Each unit can move and attack once per turn, but this can be nuanced depending on which role each unit plays. A quirk with this game is that the max character level is tied to the player level. Not the first time I've seen it, so don't expect to grind and max anyone out right away. Going into each unit's talent menu, it will actually branch out into 2 different paths, in which you can only select one at a time. You can unlock the other side, but the currency to unlock it is harder to come by. This means if you're not careful, you can potentially lock yourself out of a character build, as once you commit to one side, you can't unlock the other. There are also limit breaks by pulling or earning tokens for more copies of that unit, which to my understanding is possible through one of the farming nodes. There's also the classic gearing system with a weapon, trinket, and something called the Turret Whisper that I wasn't able to unlock yet. Unfortunately, this game also features a weapon gacha, and unlike some out there, it's not possible for weapons nor trinkets to drop from the character gacha. The weapon gacha is generally considered for whales, so it's not going to be your main focus if you spend casually. You get a 240 stamina cap right away. It regens one unit every 4 minutes, so a full refill is 16 hours, meaning if you want to be efficient, you do have to log in twice a day to not let it overflow. Surprisingly, a story mission takes up a whopping 30 stamina, so you get to play one level every 2 hours. You can go into the different farming nodes for XP, skill materials, and others. You can put the game on autoplay and even speed it up, and there's even a sweep function, but it will require its respective currency, so I don't think you can just do it whenever you want. Something else I quite like is that unlike some gachas that lock certain farming levels behind certain days of the week, Convallaria gives you a bonus drop rate of a certain node every day. So you can still farm whatever you want, it's just that you're encouraged to farm one type of materials instead. I greatly prefer this system over the former. Character rarity is split into common, rare, epic, and legendary. The SSR drop chance is 2%, which is admittedly on the slightly higher end. The rate for epic heroes is 20%, rare being 40%, and common, hilariously enough, at a lower rate of 38%. If you have not pulled any legendary heroes after 100 pulls, you are guaranteed to get one, but the rate up is the classic 50-50 coin flip, so you could lose the 50% here. If you still have not gotten a single copy of the rate up SSR, after 180 pulls, you are guaranteed to get one. Yes, the hard pity is at 180 pulls. The pity mileage does carry over across banners, but there are multiple types of banners, namely another one with split rate up that carry over their pity separately. You roll using the gacha currency Luxite for 150 units per pull. From a first impressions perspective, I definitely would not say that the pull rates are generous. It's fine given that you get a lot of free pulls on launch day, but the free-to-play economy is not very in your favor. Something I do want to give praise on is that since the game actually has been live on the Taiwanese servers for a year, there are truly no limited units. After one debut, every rate-up unit is added to the permanent pool. One heads up is that if the rarity right under the highest one is so accessible, then I don't expect many of them to be good. From what I've seen, you can definitely use some of them in the early to mid game, but all the tier lists I've seen online compare the 5 stars, so the lower rarities don't have as much spotlight on them. It's also very clear that the designs with the lower rarities aren't given as much polish, most of them having generic names or appearances. When a gacha game designs its systems, there is usually a balance of who gets the SSR treatment and who doesn't. Obviously, creating more shiny 5 stars will be much more likely to increase revenue versus 4 stars. Since the gacha is the primary source of how the game makes money, if the low rarities are so easy to get, then there's no point putting too much effort into them. This seems to be exactly the case in Sword of Convallaria. While you can do the majority of story content without touching the gacha at all, if you want to progress your account by pulling powerful characters in their niches, you will have to pull for the SSRs. From the forums and guides I found online, some of the epics and even rares or commons can be used in the early to mid game, but the vast majority of what is considered meta are going to be locked behind that 2% drop rate. If you take a look at the lower rarities, the SRs and below don't even have character names, with the commons literally having titles like Outlaw or Recruit. Not to mention, non-SSRs are not even voiced. It's very clear that these characters exist solely for the purpose of being fodder from the gacha when you eventually approach the late game. I even noticed that the Enforcer and Stinger SRs have extremely similar designs, despite having completely different classes and skill sets. I guess you could make an argument that they belong to the same faction, but I don't see how they couldn't have come up with something that's even remotely different. I don't want to accuse anyone for being lazy, but if you see a low rarity in a gacha without a name, then it's likely that they're not going to get any lore or story relevance at all. The PC port is also not the best of quality. The optimization is smooth enough, since if there's a lag for a game with graphics like these, then there is something seriously wrong. There's no shortcut keys, and you can't use directional buttons to move around the main base. I'm sure someone can argue that it's primarily a mobile game and maybe better controls will arrive later, so I won't dwell too long on that. I also want to talk about monetization. I couldn't help but notice that as of the game's global launch, there are 2 different battle passes with their respective paid tracks, one offering a legendary weapon and the other one offering a skin, as well as a separate skin gacha. I guess they just want to sink their fangs in early, huh? The pricing is fairly typical for a gacha game. There is your typical 30-day supply pack for low spenders, though it also comes with more uses of the backtrack feature per day, where you can revert some of your turns if you messed up somehow. I'm not sure how to feel about this, though to be honest, if you need to backtrack that much, that's probably a skill issue, know what I'm saying? Now, there is an SSR selector that presumably allows you to select any SSR at launch, but don't think you're getting this with no strings attached, because this selector will set you back around $31. Not the worst monetization I've seen, but also not the most generous. So, what do I think about Sword of Convallaria? This game will hit a very niche crowd, but I could see it as a shining light among that crowd. There's not a lot of gacha devs these days that go the pixel art route, well, not one that's attempting to be mainstream at least. But it's definitely better than most of the shovelware that gets peddled to my email. I'm sure there's going to be a dedicated fanbase for this game. Are there some things I found to be a bit fishy? Yeah, but I don't think it's going to affect the game as a whole. The thing is, the gacha scene is so saturated these days that you really need a good gimmick or hook to stand out. I would say that the global launch of the game went off without a hitch. It's mainly about how well it can make waves in the gacha community to gain more traction. In my honest opinion, not a lot of character designs really jump out at me, nor the gameplay features, nor the music. Though obviously that's very subjective, so I'll let you take a look for yourself. It's mainly going to be the presentation and the genre that's going to capture people. So with these first impressions reviews, I'm going to be giving out a recommendation of either skip it, try it, or play it, which is basically my level of recommendations. It's saying that whether or not this game is worth your time. This game gets my first impressions rating of try it. I think in terms of production quality and the gameplay loop, there are some interesting gimmicks that are just lurking under the surface. You're either going to like this type of gameplay or you're not. In an industry where everyone is trying to go the 3D route, Sword of Convallaria is a breath of fresh air that just doesn't do anything spectacularly outstanding. I want to restate that this game can be played completely free of charge if you purely focus on the Spiral of Destiny story mode. And it hurts me to say that even though Convallaria does a lot of things right, but in this market you have to be a superstar in order to have a chance to become a top contender in the gacha space. Even though I wouldn't say it doesn't do anything too extraordinary, this is one of the more notable releases this year. Thanks for tuning in to this first impressions review. Now, as you might imagine, speaking out my true thoughts about freshly released gacha games can burn any bridges regarding future sponsorships, especially if I don't give them a glowing review. which is why I started an affiliation with NordVPN. If you're in the market for a quality VPN service and wish to learn more, click on my affiliate link in the description to educate yourself about the deals they're having, including their secure password manager NordPass. If you wish to support what I do, whenever you make a purchase via my affiliate link, I get a share of the proceeds. It'll help me out tremendously, and you'll get something in return as well. That's it for now. If you enjoy watching more gacha content like this, you know what to do. As always, have fun out there.